Most people live in environments they are very familiar with, and familiarity makes things seem reasonable. However, if given the chance to experience something different, you might discover many unreasonable aspects of life. Let's discuss how to deal with those inconsistencies. In Harbin, there's a famous attraction called Central Street. It's a pedestrian street with historic roads and buildings, unique cuisine, shops, and people playing saxophones and violins on balconies. In this self-proclaimed city of music, Central Street should embody artistic vibes. However, during my recent visit, the most profound experience was not artistic but rather a loudspeaker. A female voice, overpowering all the street music, announced, "To build a civilized city, illegal stalls and obstruction of the road are prohibited in this area." Then followed by a rendition of the song, Katyusha. This announcement repeated continuously, covering the entire street. It felt like being in a cyberpunk dystopian film. In reality, there were no street vendors on Central Street. The shops were properly arranged on both sides, no street performances, and even buskers were rare. The only discordant element was that loudspeaker. Who installed that loudspeaker? What is the purpose of these repetitive warnings? Don't they realize that this sound completely destroys the artistic atmosphere? Why do people seem indifferent to it? There is an airport where the international terminal seems to be deliberately tormenting passengers from its architectural design to its organization and management. You have to wait in a small hall for an hour, then carry all your luggage up the stairs to another hall for check-in, go through security, climb more stairs to the departure gate. They give you a red tag for the shuttle, and you return the tag 10 minutes after getting off the shuttle. Passengers with their belongings move awkwardly, showing no signs of temper at all. Of course, such situations are not limited to a specific city or even to China. Some airlines, like Korean Air, have a flaw in the design of the screens on the seats. If you want to sleep and not watch a movie, you can manually turn off the screen. However, it's just a soft switch, so every time there's an announcement, the screen lights up. No useful information, just a reminder that it's broadcasting time. After the announcement ends, the screen doesn't turn off automatically. You have to manually turn it off again. Even with basic user experience awareness, such issues should not exist. Intellectuals tend to believe that the world is generally balanced, and obvious problems should automatically be optimized. However, from school drop-off routes to hospital diagnostic divisions, the real world's irrationality is ubiquitous once you start interacting with society. So, what can you do? Recognizing the irrational is a skill. If you're an entrepreneur, every irrationality in the real world could be a business opportunity. If others do things poorly, you can do them better. But most situations are not competitive markets. You can't say Central Street isn't good enough, so I'll open a pedestrian street nearby without a disturbing loudspeaker. Therefore, having the insight to recognize irrationality is not enough. You need the cognitive ability, methodology, and even moral character to match it to maintain inner coherence and calmness. Otherwise, you'll fall into the agony of cynicism. Let's start with cognition. One common cognitive perspective is control. The most naive thinking is believing that everything is the result of government, a deity, or some organization's control. Things are the way they are because they want them to be. Superficially irrational things often serve some undisclosed purpose at a deeper level. However, anyone who has worked in a government department knows that such conspiracy theories are absurd. The reality is that no power can control everything. The disruptive broadcast on Central Street is more likely the result of bureaucratic inertia. Departments need to show their presence, but the system lacks a comprehensive evaluation of the overall governance effects. Each department just wants to complete its tasks without taking responsibility for the whole. The next common thought is that if the current control is not ideal, it should be strengthened or improved, or even replaced by someone who can control it better. But if you have some knowledge of social science, you know that strong control is more terrifying than failed control. A planned economy is essentially an economy under full control. It brings not prosperity but rigidity. Why? Because it uses simple logic to handle complex matters. The spontaneous knowledge formed by people's activities in production and life, even unrecorded tacit knowledge, is extensive. How can a centralized system possibly understand and manage it? I particularly like the story of the German forest that political scientist James C. Scott shared in Seeing Like a State. The forest, a complex ecosystem, was manipulated into a standardized, regimented forest by the forestry department. It used a single tree species for predictable output. This forest had no benefits for nature, the people, or production and life, but it was convenient for statistics and advantageous for the bureaucratic group. So, seeking control only results in changing the controlled object, stifling its complexity to make it more manageable. Let's think about the regulations in schools or the rules parents impose on children. Are these for the good of the children, or for the convenience of the controllers themselves? Seeking control is the primitive instinct of power, a natural trend since the Industrial Revolution's mechanization of large-scale production. However, today, the mindset of control has been abandoned by the discerning. If you seek control, you'll only find despair. As individuals, we have no control over the world, and relying on authoritarianism is futile. What can we do? The complex world is neither controllable nor should it be controlled. However, this does not mean the world should be chaotic. There's a marvelous phenomenon, a common discovery in natural and social sciences since Adam Smith, known as spontaneous order or what we commonly refer to as emergence. For example, a free market is a form of spontaneous order. No one seeks overall control. Each player pursues their interests. The result is a complex system that is not only prosperous but also orderly. Without strong control, people can still lead good lives. The existence of spontaneous order is a tremendous comfort, indicating that the world is ultimately beautiful. As Einstein said, God is subtle, but he is not malicious. Pay attention to the many social mechanisms that are much better than control. Trust, morality, kindness, and community spirit, for instance. When my mother was hospitalized in Harbin, every healthcare worker, patient, and their family we encountered were exceptionally kind. Some people had much more severe conditions but still voluntarily helped us. Even the staff at Harbin Airport were friendly. One person even guided me to the place I couldn't find. People do these things not out of fear of punishment or to win rewards but because they believe it's the right thing to do. These are social customs, cultural norms, and moral habits. They are emergent results that no organization can dictate, and no new system can change arbitrarily. Spontaneity is always better than coercion, and internal drive is always superior to external drive. Take family education, for example. Some parents are control freaks, dictating every move their children make. People raised this way won't have a bright future. They never made decisions independently from a young age, and when they grow up, they make the worst decisions when given the chance. So, in the past 50 years, the mainstream thinking among intellectuals has shifted from control to freedom. Central Street's iconic status is not designed by any government. It's the result of cultural accumulation over a century. To rejuvenate it, we need to replace the German forest-style control with spontaneous order. The biggest disruptor on Central Street is not street artists or sidewalk vendors. It's the loudspeaker broadcasting regulations. That being said, you might worry, can things work without anyone managing them? There's an economist named James M. Buchanan, a Nobel laureate in 1986 for his work on public choice theory. He understood that comprehensive control is unattainable and appreciated Hayek's idea of spontaneous order, but he believed that relying solely on Hayek was inadequate. In 1976, Buchanan delivered a speech titled Law and the Invisible Hand, where he told a story about a beach. Every tourist likes a clean beach, but some people leave litter on the beach. Over time, the beach becomes littered. You didn't want to ruin the beach, but considering it's already dirty, you feel that cleaning up your litter won't make a significant difference, so you leave some trash too. Thus, the beach becomes even dirtier. This is also a form of spontaneous order. Buchanan argued that we should not accept such an order. Many people, including myself, might think that spontaneous order has more legitimacy than order imposed by control. But Buchanan reminds us that spontaneous doesn't necessarily mean good. Buchanan believed that spontaneous doesn't equal unchangeable. This idea is easy to understand. After all, you wouldn't want Central Street to be occupied by various vendors, and you wouldn't want to completely let your children do as they please. What if they turn out badly? Spontaneous order is a neutral term. It can be good or bad. Just because it's spontaneous doesn't mean it can't be improved. But how do you intervene? Do you have to go back to the old path of control? Find a balance point between laissez-faire and full control, like, say, 50% control. The various flaws of control. Information deficiency, deprivation of autonomy, unnaturalness, rigidity, energy consumption, and more. Don't disappear just because the degree of control is less. Control always has destructive power, and the behavior of coercion itself is unethical. Fortunately, outside of freedom and control, we have a third means. Shaping. You can use your influence to shape things into a better state. Let's delve into this in the next section.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.